Hello, fellow comic book worms. Today I have a guest. I think my brother Otaku Hyung is going to introduce him. So Otaku Hyung take over, and I'll take care of the chat room.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of you who watch our channels watch other channels, and Brandon's been kind of making the community circuit, promoting his book, and so we just wanted to also kind of give him an opportunity to come on, talk about the book, and get to know him better. So, Brandon, why don't you just kind of give an introduction of yourself to a brief introduction of yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so my name is Brandon Ingram, kind of head of my own publishing line. It's weird to say that because it ultimately is me, started as me, but I work with artists all over. The publishing line's Disney Comics. And I've been making comics since early 2019, but in terms of actually publishing them, that was around May of 2021 is when I actually started publishing them, and really liked it. I've loved comics since very young age, 7 or 8 years old, uh, till today. Yes, I make comics, but it's not like I just randomly got into making comics. I loved comics growing up and eventually led me to making comics.
Yeah, let's dive deeper into that. So, what age were you when you got into comics, and what were you reading? Who were, what characters or I guess even writers and artists were you influenced by?
Yeah, ultimately, I started out in comics. This wasn't like when I was super serious into comics, but my first foray into comics was like when I was 7 or 8 years old. I would go yard selling with my mom, like different yard sales and stuff. And we went to a yard sale, got a shoebox full of Marvel, DC, Valiant stuff, like stuff from like the 70s to early 90s. And it had stuff like Adventures of Spider-Man, or not Adventures of Spider-Man. Uh, what was Amazing Spider-Man?
Amazing
Thank you.
Spider-Man.
I was thinking of Adventures of Superman. Adventures of Superman was also in there, as well as more obscure stuff like DP7 from Marvel, and then some of the Solar Team comics. I forgot exactly what it was for Valiant. Just random stuff. So read that stuff like that, and it was random back issues. It was like part 3 of a 10-part story, and yes, it's a weird place to jump on, but me at a young age, I was like, this is awesome. Even though I don't have parts 5 through 10, or I don't have part 1 and 2, like that one comic is like, oh, this is like a great story. Just kind of a good way for me to get into comics. In terms of me, like getting into comics seriously, it was around high school. Uh, a buddy of mine gave me the trade of the New 52 Batman. It was the Court of Owls storyline. It had Court of Owls, um, and he gave me that. I read that. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. And then you get to the end of Court of Owls, and that first volume, there's more to the Court of Owls story. There's Night of the Owls, that second volume. Like, oh crap, I got to read more. So I went to the comic shop, got Night of the Owls, read it. Hey, Glenn, and read that, and then that pretty much got me onto the New 52 Batman run. I was kind of most of the time keeping up with that run, as well as seeing what else was going on and stuff. But really seriously getting into comics was the DC Rebirth era. Like once that rolled out, I was picking up floppies like every week, basically. So yeah.
Wow, great! Actually, a great time to be getting into DC. That was a
Oh
big
yeah.
transition for the. So you're a DC guy. That's great to hear. Naman Hyung and I are both DC guys. We love DC. Glad that you're also a DC
Oh yeah.
fan. So yeah, Scott Snyder. So he was obviously a big influence on you. Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say he my personal in terms of influences or writers I like, he's at least top 10 comic writers for me, maybe top 5. He's very influential for me with stuff like his Batman stuff, but also with his horror stuff like Witches, just different stuff like that. Like Witches is what got me into horror comics, or modern horror comics I should say. Like there's horror comics like stuff from 60s, 70s, like Tales from the Crypt, all the Marvel series and stuff like that. Then there's just a long period of like no horror comics. And then it wasn't till like the 2000s where horror started kicking back in. And Witches was kind of that one that got me into horror comics.
Nice.
So I definitely mentioned him. I really like Tom King, specifically for his like maxi series, like
Hey.
if he does like a 12 issue series or 8 issue series, that sort of stuff. I'm so on like his Batman run, but yeah, really like stuff like Mr. Miracle and stuff. Nice. Glenn, don't read it all at once. Don't read all of Batman New 52 at once. The reason I mentioned that is it's good. There needs to be like breaks in your reading when you're reading it per arc, because every arc is this big bombastic event in Gotham. It is great, but if you're reading it all at once, you might get a little bit burnt out because you're like, oh my gosh, how many world-ending or Gotham-ending events happens every day in Gotham? That's
Right.
Scott Snyder. Every arc is that. It's great, but you need some time in between that. So take breaks here and there between the arcs.
Take this from a creator himself, okay? The comic creator himself. So
I like that New 52 run, but that's my one complaint with it is just everything. Every arc is just so big, and Gotham's destroying to where when you get to the super heavy arc where Jim Gordon is Batman. I know it's 50-50 for some people. I kind of like the super heavy arc. Like it's interesting. Like it's different. And it's pretty small, at least volume 8 of New 52 Batman. It's small. It's just Jim Gordon, Detective Batman, doing his thing.
Yeah.
And then the end of volume 9, it becomes a big Gotham ending thing. But it's like, okay, well, Jim Gordon gets his chance at the big Gotham ending thing. So, but that's my one gripe with New 52 Batman is just how big it is at the end of every arc.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't read too many modern because I read comics back during the copper 90s era, and I haven't had an opportunity to read much modern stuff. But I did read the New 52 Batman, especially the Quarter Owls, essentially.
Yeah.
And I really like what Snyder did in proposing that Thomas Wayne's murder, well, basically Bruce Wayne's parents' murder was not random. It was sort of this like conspiracy within the secret society. So I really that was a really compelling, change of the narrative of Batman, and then him being focused on solving that mystery. That was pretty cool.
It brought that new like mythos to Gotham itself, but also like you're saying that mythos to like the Waynes, because the Waynes is an intrinsic part of Gotham's upbringing, kind of.
Absolutely.
So it's really cool.
Yeah. All right. So these are some of you talked about some of the influences. So you focusing on what you like to write about. I'm assuming that it's horror, or
It's
talk about
the stuff I should say. I'm it's almost the cheating stuff for me, where it does challenge me, but not as much as like other genres. Like the stuff I feel like I do pretty well at, or at least I can put out in my eyes as a writer a good script fairly fast is stuff like horror or comedy. Like horror and comedy, I do pretty well at. I like to write other genres as well. They're just a little bit more challenging or take a little bit more time, but I do like writing them. But yeah, when it comes to horror and comedy, there's a ton of influences. There's a lot of like stand-up influence with comedy. Like I really like Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald's one of my favorite comedians. He's hilarious. Like I don't read much like text type books where it's just words. Like most of the time I'm reading comics and graphic novels and stuff with pictures. But Norm Macdonald had a book that he wrote called like Not a Memoir or something. is one of the first like books I read in a long time back when that came out. It is one of the funniest books I've read, comic or not comic. So Norm Macdonald's a big influence in comedy. Kevin Smith, I would say, is also a pretty big influence in comedy for me. When it comes to like dialogue type comedy, because that's the thing with a lot of Kevin Smith's movies is like, yes, there's action, but like sometimes it's just literally people just having a conversation, and that's where the comedy comes through, is just people talking. It's like podcasts and radio shows before they were big, basically. Like that's the Kevin Smith dialogue stuff. Those are two big influences. I know there's more comedy influences, but those are the ones that pop in my head. Horror, I'm a huge horror guy. So like to get on specifics, that's like a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I mean, those are two very contrasting genres, but I think more and more you see sort of I mean, in movies these days, you just have to have certain horror elements and you have to have certain comedic elements for audiences to really engage. It's great that you have that you have that focus in your writing. Let's talk about your company and some of the projects that you're working on. Can you talk about, first of all, what started, what your first kind of project was, and how it was received, and then some of the current projects that you're working on?
So yeah, the first, I should say, the first comic I started working with an artist on was Dismay Avenue, and I'm only popping it up. Like Dismay Avenue was the first comic I was working on. It was horror, and it was the first artist I worked with, like multiple artists, because it's an anthology, has multiple stories in each issue. That was the first comic I worked on, and when I started it, the very beginning when I started it, it was like it'll be a bucket list thing. Like I want this to be a bucket list thing, and then like when I was less than a quarter way in, I was like, oh crap, like this is going to be way more than a bucket list. Like I love this too much. Like so started out as Dismay Avenue, first comics I was working on, and then through an artist that was working on Dismay Avenue, I hired them to work on The Gallows Man. In terms of publishing, like getting it out to the people, The Gallows Man was the first comic I put out, The Gallows Man #1, and it did pretty good. Like it got pretty good reception. At that time, I was fairly new to the whole marketing aspect of an indie comic, so I was just reaching out to anyone that would just like, here, look at this, and had a lot of review sites review it. Got on a few YouTube shows and podcasts and stuff, but it did fairly well. And then after that, Gallows Man #2. Then after that, I finally put out Dismay Avenue 1 and 2, and then now the current one. It's a wild ride as it went along.
Can you talk about Gallows Man, what it's about, and sort of what you wanted to communicate, the themes that it conveys?
Yeah. So the Gallows Man is basically Adam West Batman meets Inglorious Bastards. Like it's it's literally the 1960s like fun jovialness of Adam West Batman. It's in the 1940s. The Gallows Man is, so it has that fun jovialness of Adam West Batman, but he's beating up and viciously killing Nazis. It's a wild ride.
Wow.
To answer K-pop's question, I just saw it pop up real quick. I hypnotized many people. It didn't work though. I hypnotized them and they ran away from my work. I had my tinfoil hat on backwards to where I hypnotized them thinking I was hypnotizing them in buying the book, but really I was hypnotizing them to run away from the book. That was my fault.
So wait a second. Did you use a new tinfoil?
Yes, I did. So that's the thing, is I actually I forgot to bring my tinfoil hat that I made, that I've done on all the YouTube shows and stuff. I forgot to bring it. So the lucky thing is I had a roll of tinfoil with me. So I just made a new hat in the hotel room. So I had that.
Oh,
And
can I yam at least?
Yeah. I gave out the coupons, the can yam coupons. Yeah.
and this is in reference to this weekend. For those that don't know what you're referring to. Can you talk about what happened this weekend?
Oh yeah. So I was at a convention this weekend. I was at MobyCon in Mobile, Alabama. It went pretty well in terms of or I shouldn't say fan interaction, but interactions with people. Like it went like very well, helping spread the name of all the stuff. And I was dressed, for those that don't know, there's a character in my current Kickstarter book who's a homeless villain that has spiral hypno glasses on. And he wears a tinfoil hat. I was dressed as him at the convention, and it went very well. Got a lot of eyes attracted to it. Some people I did notice because I didn't wear the spiral glasses all the time, because I noticed this one thing. Some people would not look over because they didn't know if I was looking at them. I could be like looking over here, but with the spiral glasses, it looks like I'm looking right at them, basically.
Right.
So I would take it off here and there because I think it like put people off a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the show. Like what how long have you been doing shows, and are you getting what you want out of them? What have the engagements been like?
I'd say ultimately I've been getting a lot out of them. This is my first year of doing shows. Like this one that I just did, it's the 5th show I've done this year. I've got one more in a couple weeks that'll kind of close out the year. And I'll basically look at all of them and pretty much go about in terms of scheduling for 2024 based on, it sounds nerdy to say it, the data I've collected from this year's shows. What I've realized is, and this goes for if there's any indie creators out there, doesn't have to be comics. Could literally just be you make indie art and you want to go to a show and sell your art, essentially. Don't do big conventions, at least starting out. Don't do big conventions. This was an exception for me. In January, I did Fan Expo New Orleans. That's kind of the biggest convention I've done. Ultimately, I'm glad I did it because it was an amazing experience. But you're competing with so much at big conventions as an indie artist or an indie comic creator, because something you got to factor in with that is, one, your cost. I'm like 3 hours from New Orleans. So I paid for like 3 nights at a hotel, and like that adds up, as well as you're paying for table costs. And New Orleans Fan Expo table costs was $325. It's more at some places. I heard at the Dallas one it was like $500 for table costs.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to factor in those. And my goal with any of these shows that I'll be implementing going forward is break even. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
I make my table costs back, and if I get a hotel, I make the hotel costs back. And didn't do that at Fan Expo. I wasn't expecting to. It was my first show. It was a big show. Like I went as a vendor, but I also went as like, ooh, like there's some comic creators I really want to meet. Like Jim Shooter's here, Jim Kruger's here. A lot of Jims. I just realized there's a lot of Jims in the comic creating thing. But there's a lot of big comic creators that I wanted to meet, so that made up for it as well. But yeah, you have to kind of factor that in, because you're also competing with the draws of those big shows, the celebrities. Like I mentioned, the big comic creators, they're not the draws of the show even. It's the celebrities. Like they had Sam Raimi there. They had what's his name? The guy that played Samwise in Lord of the Rings, Sean Austin.
Oh yeah, cool.
They had him, Eddie from Stranger Things season 4. They had a lot of big stars there. So it's $50 to get in for a day as a customer, like someone coming in, $50. Then for that celebrity that they're there for, it's probably at least $100 for an autograph and picture.
Really, $100? Wow.
It's wild. In terms of like even if
Package.
it's a
Yeah.
semi-big celebrity, it's going to be like $100. Like Sam Raimi, definitely $100 for autograph and picture. Sean Austin, Eddie from Stranger Things. I knew the Eddie from Stranger Things one because I was going to get a T-shirt autographed by him for my sister. Just the autograph was like $100. I was like,
Wow.
I'll just get my sister the T-shirt instead. I can't get the autograph. Yeah, it's pricey. So as a vendor, I mentioned all this. As a vendor, you have to keep that in mind. People are paying at least $150, as well as food. They're going to be there all day. They're going to go to the food court or whatever. They're going to be out at least like $20 there. You have to factor all that in.
I never looked at those. Was there really lines at those? Were there lines there actually?
There's lines for like not entirely going into the place, but when it comes to like the celebrity draws, like yes, like you would think Sam Raimi was like the second biggest line. The biggest line there was Eddie from Stranger Things season 4. That was the biggest line there. It was huge, and it was also because it was his second American convention that he's done because he's from the UK. So yeah, like it's crazy. So I mention all this as an indie creator of any kind. If anyone's trying to take notes or whatever, do smaller conventions because you'll at least be able to make your money back on table, and if you have to get a hotel, and you might make a little profit.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear about the conversation you had with Jim Shooter because he's a legend in the industry and a great person to sort of get guidance from and learn from. Obviously, he probably was very busy during the convention, but what was your engagement with him? Did you get some nuggets of wisdom from him?
So yeah, the Jim Shooter thing, he had a panel. It was him and I'm trying to think. It was like the head of Mad Magazine whenever Mad Magazine came out. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was them two. Like they did a panel together. And I saw that whenever we were going to the convention. I was like, oh crap, like because I went with my buddy Tio. He goes with me and like helps me out a ton at these conventions. I told him, if I'm too busy, can you go to the panel and take notes? Like if you want to ask questions, sure, whatever, but take notes because we're both big into comics. He went, he came back. He told me like some of the stuff that was said. Ultimately, it was ultimately stuff you've heard in interviews before on Jim Shooter or not saying softball questions, but more like someone who's not big into comics asking a question to where it wasn't super informative for someone that was big into comics. Not saying that's an issue. Like that person just learned. That is amazing. Where ultimately, my friend told me a couple things, and he showed me the paper, and he wrote down like one line. And I was like, "You didn't write down anything else?" He was like, "I was too invested in them talking." I was like, "Dude." So I don't fully know what all was said. But apparently it was hypnotizing and mesmerizing for my friend enough to where he didn't take notes.
Well, the good thing we have YouTube. Those panels will probably pop up on YouTube at some point.
And what's interesting, the one thing I do remember him telling me, because I asked him what was the turnout for the panel. And I didn't expect it to be big, but I expected it to be somewhat big. Because in terms of the comic creators that's there, Jim Shooter's the biggest name. And he said it was, including him, like no more than 15 to 20 people.
Oh.
I was like, really? Huh? Like, it's sad. I guess it kind of makes sense. Because, like, yes, it's a comic con or a comic convention, but ultimately, like, those days are gone. It's pop culture convention, which is great. Like, I love the fandoms and the nerddoms coming together. But comics in those conventions are such a small part compared
Yeah,
to what they were before.
that is interesting to hear, because I definitely would have gone to the Jim Shooter panel for sure. But I can see how a lot of the younger kids might not know who the man is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's a little sad to hear that, but great. All right, so yeah, let's talk more about the the
Let me
Kickstarter.
let me.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think Tim Nutty asked if you were to, what was that? If you could write for one DC character, who would it be and why?
Oh, great question, TM.
Okay, so there's two of them. There's one that would be more likely. I'll get to that. I'll first mention like not Batman. I do like Batman, but like currently, and I don't see it ever changing for me. I don't have a original idea for Batman because there's just there's so many good stories for Batman out there to where like if you think of a what you think as an original idea for him or whatever, it's like, oh no, that actually happened in this story, or that
Right,
sounds
right.
exactly like this story. They start bleeding in to where I enjoy Batman, but I don't want to write Batman because it'd just be mediocre. Um, in terms of very popular characters, this is the one that they would shut me down for because I would never make it into the meeting room to do this. I would. Hey, I won't talk about it here because me and my buddy actually are like thinking about this. His name wasn't Buttman, but we had a conversation, not this past convention, Katie, but the convention before, where it was just 2 hours of us driving home from the convention, pitching to each other. Like it was just fun talking, pitching. He has another name, but essentially Buttman, to where it's a Batman parody. Um, and it's a parody of like the Nolan trilogy, but with this Batman character
Oh,
basically. And it was very fun and funny. We might do something within the future. At the very least, we'll do like a podcast pitch episode or something. Um, but what was I saying before? I'm so sorry.
you were
Trying to
talking about the DC character you'd.
Oh, DC character, yeah. So Superman, I would really love to write Superman. Superman's my favorite, not just DC character, but just superhero in general. I am ultimately happy and optimistic for the route that it seems like James Gunn is going to go with it based on what he said. Now I'm still a little bit cautious, have to see when it actually comes out. But yeah, I would love to write Superman. I absolutely love Superman. And for those that say he's boring because he's a Boy Scout and he's overpowered and all this stuff, it's like you have never read a Superman comic.
Yeah.
Like, sure, he's extremely powerful, but that's not what makes him like yes, he's a Superman, but it's something for us to aspire as. Who Superman is like the personality, the character himself. Like, yes, he's Superman. And all of these writers and creators the past 10 or 15 years, I should say 15 years, see that like, oh, a real Superman in real life, how he'd be murdering everyone because he has all this power and he's super awful and all this stuff.
Right.
Sure, I like those interpretations. That's not Superman,
That's
though.
not Superman. Yeah.
Superman, he is super and he is powerful.
Yeah.
That's that character within him. That is Superman. That is who Superman is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. But so Naman Young and I are big Superman fans as well. Glad to hear that you're also a Superman guy. But so going back to what you said earlier about Gunn's, what you think Gunn's going to do with the character, and I think this is obviously a big sort of a big topic of conversation. What the Gunn DC universe is going to look like. Did you have? So I think everybody's looking at was it Superman Legacy?
Yeah.
And Grant Morrison. What's your relation, or what's your, I guess,
desire, maybe?
exposure to Grant Morrison,
Uh into Grant Morrison,
just as a writer. Yeah.
yeah, it ultimately, I'm trying to think, what was my first book? My first book by Grant Morrison probably was All Star Superman, which I
Okay, yeah.
do really like. All Star Superman. All Star Superman is top 5 Superman stories, if not top 3 Superman stories for me. One thing I will say though, me personally, in terms of the Superman stuff I've read, I don't think it's my number one Superman story though. It's definitely up there. It's definitely one that everyone who talks about, like, oh, Superman's this, read that and it'll likely change your mind about it. But like me personally, I think Tom King's Superman Up in the Sky was better than All Star Superman. I loved Up in the Sky.
Nice.
It's one of my favorite Superman comics, but also
Can you
just
summarize that one? Because I
favorite
haven't read it.
comics. Do
Yeah,
I?
Can
I
you
haven't read
summarize
it
that
either.
one?
So best way to kind of describe it is, and what's so weird, because yeah, it makes sense people haven't read it, because it started out as a Walmart book. Like whenever DC was doing Walmart books, started out as a Walmart book. It was in a like a issue, and it was one of the stories within the issue. So the book itself is 12 chapters pretty much, and each chapter is 12 pages, and it pretty much follows this girl who goes missing. Like, she gets abducted in Gotham. This girl gets abducted in Gotham and by aliens of some kind, and she's gone. Batman tells Superman about this, and ultimately Superman's trying to decide, like, do I go save her? But what about problems on Earth? What if something happens on Earth while I'm gone? And so he's debating that. And eventually, this isn't a spoiler, this happens within the first chapter at the very end. He decides that he will go up in the sky to find her and to save her. Every chapter after that is essentially like these elements or tasks or obstacles that Superman faces along that journey in space to find her. In each chapter defines Superman in different ways. Like by the end of each of these 12-page stories, it describes who Superman is in some way.
Right.
It's these adventures leading to Superman eventually finding the girl. I won't say too much more than that, but it's like, I don't know. Each chapter is, to me, like amazing, because each one defines him so well.
Yeah. What I find compelling about whether you're talking about Superman or whether you're talking about Batman, and it's really what I mean, this idea of alter ego, this idea of donning a suit or donning a mask, um, and portraying a hero, um, is really compelling to a reader. I think, right? And that's what made Superman so compelling early on. It's like, here's this guy who's a superhero, but he dresses up as this mild mannered Clark Kent, but that's really who Superman is, right? It's
Yeah,
like the irony of he's not dressing up to be something. Like, Superman is his sort of, like, alter ego, if you could put it that way, and Clark Kent is really who he is, and so
that's the person, is Clark
yeah,
Kent.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
person, right?
spot
And
on.
but at the same time, Superman, because he's Clark Kent, is why he's so great. He's
Yeah,
has these, like, American, small town values, and yeah, I think as a character study, Superman deserves a lot more credit.
Don't you think though? He's other people like Batman is his disguise is wearing mask. Superman disguise is being a Clark Kent, right?
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Because yeah, Batman, like, dressed as Batman, that is him. Bruce
That's
Wayne is the alter ego, whereas like you said, Naaman, like, yeah, Superman, the Superman persona, that's like his alter ego, whereas the man himself is Clark Kent. Yeah, very well
Yeah,
put.
it's the dichotomy in the two characters, and that's why I think
Yeah,
they complement each other so well. And throughout that DC, history, these two characters have been best friends because I think they kind of understand each other from that perspective.
oh yeah.
Young, do you have any questions for Brendan?
Yeah, Brendan. Now I know you've been with a whole bunch of YouTubers. I mean, basically our community with the K-pop, with the. I think you started at TM Nerdy, right? When you first
Yes,
Nerdy and
last year when I did
Roscoe.
Dismay Avenue, I was on Geek Out with Roscoe with
Yeah.
TM and Roscoe.
Then you hit the circuit here. Did you find that successful for you, or
Oh yeah, it helps a lot. Like one in terms of like marketing the book, but also like in my own like actual life, there's not a lot of people I can talk about comics with. To where like it is fun just like coming on these shows. Like yes, talking about my book, but just talking about like comics as a whole, because comics are such a niche thing compared to almost any other media. Comics are one of the most niche things out there to where when you find that community, which likely isn't in your real life, if you live in a place like where I live, like in the South, and I live like 40 minutes from a comic shop, like I'm not close to a comic shop. And even if you go into a comic shop, there's tons of different comics. So you guys might not be reading the same stuff or even the same publisher to where you have the comic connection, but not the publisher or book connection to where you can find that a lot better online. So I mentioned all that to say like I love like going on these shows. Yes, to talk about my book, but just comics in general kind of.
Hmm.
I noticed that you've been, let's say, you've been going to YouTube channels. You've been doing the ever since I saw you in that show. You have been doing a lot of stuff to promote your books, and I've seen you grow as a creator from that guy. What was that guy you imitated the first time?
Oh, Hypno Ray.
No, not the Himnoray,
Or
the 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 nerdy guy, the young kid. Uh,
I'm trying to think. Oh, Napoleon Dynamite.
Now, yeah, Napoleon
Yeah,
Dynamite.
yeah,
You went from that nerdy, goofy
yeah,
Napoleon
yeah,
Dynamite to,
yeah.
I mean, the marketing genius now. So, what's I mean, which one was more effective for you? These going to these small size shows, or going to these YouTube channels? Do you
In terms of locally these small conventions help me in terms of like getting my name out, and I see like some of these people at the next convention to where it's like, oh hey, like keeping that rapport with fans and with people I meet and stuff, and as well as the YouTube shows. The YouTube shows, it helps in terms of it being more than just a localized thing. Like I'm talking with people across the United States. I'm talking with people in Canada when it comes to like TM and others. I'm talking.
Alain?
I think I've talked with like a guy who has a podcast in Australia. Like just being able to branch out from just a regional thing.
Hmm.
Nah, so you're hitting both corners of the.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
cool. Now,
So
go ahead.
let's turn to the project, and we have some data up here. It looks like Tales from Town City. This is a project you're working on. Um, Take us into the, I guess, you mentioned that you were pitching ideas, and obviously that's a big part of the process. If you were to work with like an editor, you'd want to pitch an idea and get a story, kind of get a feel for the story. Pitch us this project here. What is it about, and like what are the things you wanting to communicate and convey with it with this?
So yeah, like essentially Tells from Town City #1 is this, as well as Gallows Man, is kind of my way of getting something out there that is fun and funny, essentially. Like I love current comics, absolutely love them. I love how deep they can get, how I am crying or crying of happiness afterwards, or just thinking philosophically about it. But sometimes you need a little break in between those deep or serious or philosophical comics to where it's just a fun time. And so that's kind of like with Gallows Man and Tales from Town City is like I offer that break for people. Like here's your intermission between Tom King telling you how bad war is with each of his books. I really love Tom King. That's not a bash towards Tom King. That is just a theme that you see with some of his books. But yeah, ultimately with Tales from Town City, I'll first mention the Gallows Man. Gallows Man, we talked about it earlier. It's Adam West Batman meets Inglorious Bastards. Has that fun, campy tone, all while he's like viciously murdering Nazis. And so it Tales from Town City, it's a spin-off of the Gallows Man. And it follows minor characters that were introduced in the Gallows Man. You don't have to read any of the Gallows Man. Tales from Town City ultimately is its own thing, and you can enjoy it. In the first issue, there's 3 stories in it. The first one is 2 homeless villains trying to use expired coupons. It's fun, wacky. The second one is a mortician just trying to make sense of dead villains' names, villains that died in the Gallows Man, but you don't have to have that context. He's just, as he's cremating these dead villains' bodies, just ranting to himself. Like no one else can hear him. It's just dead bodies, just ranting like, okay, yeah, your name makes sense. Your name's the Frog. You're dressed as a frog. That makes sense. To where it's like, oh, like your name's the Jackal. You look nothing like a jackal. I heard you don't even laugh like a jackal. Like that would make sense. Like you're dressed in a green suit. Be like the Green Gangster or something. That makes more sense. Not a great name, but so there's that. And then there's Fierce Pets. And I'll mention Fierce Pets. PETS is an acronym, stands for Precise Ecosystemic Tactical Squad, kind of harkening back to those Wildcats days. And Fierce Pets follows a team of super animals slaughtering animal poachers. Of the 3 stories, that is the one that is like biggest action as well as like gruesome violence.
Nice. That's what we all want to see, though, right?
A little taste of Town City, basically, where the Gallows Man resides in. Like, what happens in between the pages of the Gallows Man with these characters, or what happens before the Gallows Man with these characters? You kind of see that with these type of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you something, okay?
Yeah.
Put this question through rest because CJ he's stealing my question. Now, does this question make sense to you? What makes you?
What makes me? Yeah.
Does it, yes or no? Just yes or no first. Does it?
Yeah.
Does it
totally makes sense?
Okay, thank you. Makes sense. So now, go ahead and answer that question for me, please.
What makes me is essentially. I mean, there's a variety of elements that, it's a very deep question. It's a variety of elements that have made me. Like definitely my parents in my upbringing has made me in terms of socializing with people. But when it comes to like some of my interests, like comics and stuff like that, stuff that makes me is like the movies I grew up on, or the TV shows I grew up on, or like some of the friends, like my uncle getting me into video games and playing weirder games like table tennis, like playing ping pong. I love ping pong. Just like for everyone, what makes you is ultimately the people that have surrounded you your whole life and has slowly compiled to you through all the experiences you've had with those people.
Wow.
That's great. That's
a great answer. Thank you. Appreciate that. And CJ, be quiet.
There's a lot going on in the world. We're doom scrolling every day, and it seems like there's some headline or doomsday scenario that people are just anxious about. And anyway, there's a lot going on both here in the United States, globally, with the environment. I mean, just you name it, there's something happening. How do you kind of navigate that landscape, and what do you choose to, what, like, is there an issue, or is there something that you're passionate about that you really want to kind of work into your stories and your work?
Yeah, there's a variety of things when it comes to like my comedies, for example, like Tales from Town City or something like that. A lot of times it's crazy comedies, but some of the stuff is just like a hyperization of current time or past time. Like the Gallows Man, for example, ultimately can just be a fun, funny time you have. But you can look at it in a sense of like it's set in the Golden Age era, and at this time in the comic, it seems like this whole entire world is desensitized to violence, to where like uh, Gallows Man and his sidekick Newsboy, who's his Robin equivalent, is like murdering these muggers or murdering these people or whatever, and like radio newscasters will just be like, the Gallows Man and Newsboy, they got him again, old chums, hip hip hooray. And you have people like, yeah, I want to be like Gallows Man, like little kids, just like, I look up to Gallows Man, like, yeah, Gallows Man rocks. It's a hyperization of how we as a society have become desensitized to violence, but also not just currently. And go back to the golden age of comics, to where at that time you had heroes, like not just superheroes, but heroes who were murdering muggers or murdering, like, yes, they were murdering murderers, but there was also just like petty crimes happening. It's like, I'm gonna shoot that guy, or whatever it may have been. And you had little kids at the time, like a 5-year-old reading it and just like, yeah, I want to be like this guy. This guy rocks. Like, I look up to this guy. And so it's taking that golden age era of that and just hyperizing it for Tales from Town City. So essentially touching on like our desensitization to violence. Because something I noticed that this at our most recent convention, I've heard it before, but it's fresh in my brain. There was someone who came by. I'm a Christian. I have Christian values, but there was someone who like was a Christian and said they had Christian values, and they came by and they were looking at the comics, and I told them about the Gallows Man and stuff. And she was like, well, would this be good for my kid? And I was like, I showed her on the back. I said, it's rated M, but I did tell her like, there's no sex, there's no nudity, there's no profanity, there's no language, there's no alcohol use, no drug use, none of that. The reason it's rated M is for this over-the-top violence within it. Cartoonish violence, but still over-the-top violence. And she heard that, and she was like, oh, yeah, like, that's fine. Like, I don't care about that at all. As long as there's no language or nudity, like, I'm fine with that.
Wow.
So it was just one of those things where I noticed it this weekend, but I've noticed it in the past where, like, for some reason we're okay with violence. I'm not trying to say a message with that. It's just interesting that like nudity's the no, but violence, yeah, show my kid a head blowing up. Who gives a crap? Like just little stuff like that's just weird. So Gallows Man, that's where it fit in some of that stuff. Tales from Town City, ultimately just a fun, dumb, not calling people dummies. I meant to say fun, dumb time. But there is like some stuff within there, like the first story. It's villains, homeless villains, but really like how bad are they? Like they're kind of dumb, and but it's like a pathetic situation. You do feel kind of bad for them when reading it, and it's just not going their way as villains. No.
Hey, Brendan, let me prompt you with something that you say you're Christian, right?
Yeah.
Are you well versed in Bible?
Oh yeah. There's tons of violence in the Bible itself.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's tons of sexual
Oh yeah. No,
topic.
no, that's what I'm saying is like it's just interesting how people pick and choose those things.
Yeah, let me. If you were to say, let's say, take any of the stories in the Bible and make comedy out of it, what would you choose?
Oh, I've thought about this, which I decided not to do it because I then reread it and realized it just didn't work well once I reread it.
Yeah.
What I was going to do, and if
No,
someone
that's
wants to do
blasphemy,
it,
by the way. That's blasphemy. It's God's
well,
word, and
this,
you can't really
yeah,
mock that.
this one thing, people probably would have said blasphemy. It was ultimately just like I basically here was the idea. Anyone can take this if they want, because I'm not going to do it because I realize it's a little bit different in text. So in the Exodus, with Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt and stuff, there's multiple times where you hear the Israelites complaining, like about the situation, just like like this like sucks, but various stuff like we want something to drink, and drink would come, or we're tired of eating manna. Like, can we have some meat? Like just various elements of complaining. My idea was take just ultimately these are fictional characters, but it's amongst the millions of Israelites that are following Moses. Two guys, I forgot what I named them, but two guys who are like going along. They're a part of the Israelites that are leaving, going along and like they're ultimately the ones complaining and just like following them. And then you even get to the part where Moses, I'm trying to remember, it's Moses whenever he strikes the rock instead of speaking to the rock. And once that happens, God tells Moses, like, because you went against what I said, you will not see the promised land in your lifetime.
Right.
And the joke in that I was going to do was those two guys I mentioned before, the Israelites, they overheard that and they're like, well, God said in Moses's lifetime, should we like, I know it sounds bad, should we kill Moses so we can see the promised land? But just little stuff like that.
I mean,
That's great.
I mean, taking things. I mean, if you're, I've noticed that you are taking things in context. So, and you're concerned about that kind of stuff. So that's good.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. Let me see. I want to.
Yeah. Let's open up questions. If you got a question for Brandon, send in the chat and we'll cover it.
Meantime, I'm going to go ahead and what I normally do is buy something for myself from the artist.
Yep.
And give something away for the chat.
Yep.
So now, in the backing this project, can I back it so that I could send it to someone?
Yes, I believe like so it's one of two things. You can either back it and then as you're backing it, you put their email stuff in before you back it, or after you've backed it, once the Kickstarter is over, it'll be shipped to you, or you can instant message me what email or what address it should be shipped to, and I can just ship it to that address instead.
Okay, that's good. Okay, let me go ahead and do that then. Let me see if.
But yeah, the reason I decided not to do the Moses one was like there was a couple things I didn't realize. The main reason was like I was hoping some of the Israelites were there whenever God told Moses that, but then I look back, it's like, oh, like it was just Moses talking with them. So it ultimately would be kind of altering it a little bit to where it's like, oh, two guys like snuck up and heard, which I don't have that big of a problem with, but I wanted it to be like as accurate as it could be, to where it's just like, oh, it's just two fill-in Israelites that just are going with the motions, to where it's like, this could have happened. Not saying it did. They're still fictional characters, but like it could have.
Yeah. Is it a sin to complain though? I'm wondering if complaining is a sin.
Mm, well, ultimately, sin is essentially like not like the action or whatever it is, like not being righteous,
Not
like
being righteous.
We complain to God every day. Like if you're a Christian or whatever it is, like
Right.
in your prayers, like a lot of times we have our complaints in there.
It is well. So yeah, I mean, it's a like complaining is essentially what makes us. You know, it's what gives us progress, right?
Yeah,
If we were happy with the status quo, we wouldn't progress at all as a, a society. But because we complain,
Israel complain all the time, and
yeah. But I was about to say, in the Old Testament, like you see multiple examples and incidents of Israelites praying, even like some of the prophets praying in like lamentations. That is essentially like crying out in anger or in complaints, essentially.
It's a big complaint.
Yeah.
You want me to use what do you hashtag you want me to use? Tinfoil? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tinfoil.
This is
okay.
I think. Oh, let me hold on. Let me see. Let me go ahead and look at the package. I think I'm thinking about what are the packages available here.
There's let's see. Do you want one just to go to someone, or do you want one for you and someone?
Yeah, well, I'll do it twice. One for me. I'll pledge it by myself.
Okay.
And I think I'll do this pledge $32 one. Okay, so Gallows Man Universe Great Value Bundle.
Yeah, and Alex asked, were you concerned about the backlash? People can get sensitive about I think you were, right?
Ultimately, yeah, because I do, like I go to church and stuff, and like I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Ultimately, it is just like, it's not that big of a deal, like that type of story, but something I also just I try to be a peacemaker or a peacekeeper, aside from like trying to stir up stuff. If I can see that something will stir something up and ultimately like I don't have a gain in it, it's like what's the
I think where you'd be, and this is just me from the conversation we've had, is like a suggestion for dealing with like religion, but in a way that's people can connect with, is to talk about hell and the devil. Like there's just a lot of comedy there, right?
Yeah. Oh, I've got a series that like I probably will do that will probably definitely get more backlash than this, but it'd be very fitting. I'm not going to talk too much about that one because literally the title itself is the premise, and that one I'm kind of keeping close to the chest because I might do something. But yes, it deals with like literally the runnings of hell. But as a Christian, you can still really enjoy it because it's not promoting hell or anything.
Right.
But it is funny.
You're kind of making fun of all the people that end up there. Right?
Look at, there's all kind of countries in there.
Oh yeah. It's available most of the world. Pretty much whatever countries KickStarter works with.
Nice.
What's Canada? How much is Canada?
I think it's either 25 or 35 for shipping. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's that is also another thing that is kind of ridiculous when it comes to the US. Like overall, love the US, but we have our issues here and there. The teeniest tiny issue is like if another country is sending us something, like here's an example. I bought the original variant cover art for Tales from Town City #1. The artist lives in Greece. It's 11 by 17 page. It's in a box. get shipped here. It costs less than $20 for him to ship it here or from there to here. If I want to ship something to Canada, it costs me like over $30.
Absolutely.
Or if I want to ship something like from here to Australia, because I did that with the last campaign. I
Yeah.
want to ship something from here to Australia. I think it was like $50.
Yeah.
And the person just bought like 1 or 2 comics.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you live outside the United States, like if you live in Europe or Asia or Australia, something like that, I recommend buying the digital copy of the book. Maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot, but if you want to read it, just get the digital copy. If you live outside of America, if you just have to have a physical copy, then get it. And don't feel like it's harming me. Like the shipping costs are there. Like you'll be clicking the shipping costs. I just don't want it to harm you as someone
Yeah.
who lives outside of
Great
America,
point.
paying 25 or whatever for shipping.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up to, since I'm in USA. I'm going to open it up to everybody because I think we have one Canadian, one from in the chat room, one from UK. So, and everybody seems to be highest one seems to be 35. So I'll open it up to everybody else. Let's see. What did we decided on? Tinfoil, right? So,
all right, get your comments in.
tinfoil chat. That's fine. Anybody,
Tinfoil.
you're welcome to put it in, Otaku Hyang.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just gonna
Get your tinfoil hats on, everyone.
going back to what Brandon said about shipping. Basically, so my son just got back from Japan, and while he was in Japan, he had this bicycle that we bought there. It was just this like
K-pop, you could go ahead and get in and then price tag someone if you want.
So we got this bicycle that's a Japanese. It was produced in Japan. It's a really high quality bicycle, and he can ride it because it's so light. It's not heavy. But if we were to get the bicycle here, it cost us maybe $120 to get a bike for him. Or we could get it shipped from Japan using Japanese logistics. It would come on a container vessel, but it'd take 2 weeks. It costs $100 to ship it.
Just for the shipment?
Just for the shipping a bike, a small toddler bike. Okay. If I were to ship that toddler bike from here to my sister, it would cost way over $100 just to ship it to California. So, absolutely. The costs here are, and I think we're feeling that. Everybody's feeling like we're paying more for stuff, like whether it's healthcare, whether it's, I don't know, like furniture or something. You're just paying lower quality, you're paying higher prices, and you're just not getting value out of what you buy these days.
Oh, yeah.
So I hope, and part of it is it's just corporate greed, right? We've let corporate greed kind of run amok in this country, and it's kind of sad. Like there has to be guardrails on how much these companies can charge and what they can make in terms of profits. So I know it goes against capitalism and everything American stands for, but ultimately, if people are going to suffer, why would you continue to support a system like that?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
Eventually, it will reach a cap out point. Like even if it isn't like legislative, like it'll eventually reach a cap out point to where it's in other countries it's like this, to where there's an upper class and there's a lower class. There's no middle class, and that's where things can get kind of rough for countries.
Yeah,
and I want us to avoid that.
Yeah, well, we may not be able to either. I mean, history is any evidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, let's not get into cap. I shouldn't have got into religion, and now we're gonna get into politics. Let's see. Is this you got in Otaku Hyung?
Let me get in.
Yeah.
I really do want to read this Tales from the.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
it's a wild, funny ride.
Yeah,
on
the
the way,
premise of animal poachers getting what they deserve is
if I get selected, I'll redial. I will redial. Okay, ready, set. Hey, good luck, everybody. Because I'm gonna get one for myself anyway, so I don't need this in here. But
if young you will get two, you pick the person you wanted to go to. Oh,
Congrats, Otaku.
thank you. Well, yeah. Hopefully, are you going to sign it? Right, you're going to sign the
Oh yeah,
book.
yeah.
Awesome.
For
Yeah,
sure.
that'll be nice.
yeah, so yes, the what I was gonna say is that yeah, the red Kelly's coming.
In the comments. Well, I'm gonna give it to Callie. I gotta give it to Kelly since he said it's rigged.
All right, I already know what tacos are. By the way, I just want to mention I haven't sent out a lot of giveaways for people. This is one of the easiest one for me to send because I could just go on the computer and type it in. So this should be easier to send. But like for instance, I owe Otaku Hyung some comic books I had, or some books for Alex and More Life and Travel. I know I owe some from TM Nerdy. I owe some J. I owe a lot of people books and comic books and drawings and all that. But just have patience with me. I'll get to you guys eventually. Okay. But this one I should get there because it's a matter of putting me credit card in there and me. I hate shipping stuff. I'm sorry. I don't know what box to put it in
And yeah, again, like with this giveaway afterwards, Naaman, you can just send me address of Otaku, like, and then once the Kickstarter's done, I can ship it his way.
Great.
Oh, so the books have yet to be produced yet.
They'll be like the books are completely done in terms of like all I have to do is send it to the printer, and then I get the copies I get.
Yeah, no rush.
Like in terms of art, covers, everything, like completely done. Just has to be sent to the printer.
Awesome.
So, all right. Any question from the chat? Any more questions, guys?
Any deep philosophical questions?
Yeah,
Like,
the good question like
who
one
am
I
I?
had.
All right. Well, how about Star Wars, Star Trek?
So okay, so I'm going to say Star Wars only because I haven't watched a lot of Star Trek, but I know within a year I will say Star Trek because everything that I've heard about Star Trek, as well as like the few episodes I've seen, I know I'm going to like it a lot. So currently Star Wars only because I haven't seen much Star Trek. But once I get into Star Trek, everything I've heard,
You haven't
I
seen
know
much
I'm
Star
going to
Trek,
lean more
huh?
that way.
I see. Yeah,
Wow.
I would recommend if you're going to get into Star Trek, start with the Next Generation.
Okay, yeah.
That's probably a good thing to jump into.
Yeah, the thing I've heard with Next Gen, because that's ultimately what I was going to get into, is like I heard season 1 is good. I heard it's good, but like go through season 1 and then from there it's not saying it's like so much better than season 1, but season 1's kind of the starter, and then it gets really good afterwards.
Yeah, I would say like season 4 Season 4 is where it gets really, really, really good.
Okay.
Alex is a huge fan of Shatner.
Yeah, well, no, don't get me wrong. The original series is awesome as well. But I grew up watching the Next Generation, so that's my generation Star Trek. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
But if
any
you want to
generation.
deal with some religious conflicts, start with the Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably, because like I had it mapped out because someone had sent me something like the order of what shows to watch. So yeah, Next Gen will probably be the first one I'll check out. With Star Wars though, I do like Star Wars. Uh, I'm not a giant fan like I was when I was younger. I do still enjoy it, but I don't keep up with everything. Like I don't try to keep up with every single thing that happens now. I get to it when I get to it, kind of like the last thing I think I checked out was like I think Mandalorian season 2, and it was really good. Like it didn't turn me off from Mandalorian or Star Wars. It was just like I'm taking my time with Star Wars. I don't want to watch it all at once and possibly get burnt out. Because I think that happened with a lot of people the past 8 years now. Is so much Star Wars content came out that a lot of people got burnt out, and I don't want to risk that because yes, there is some Star Wars stuff that I don't like at all, like Episode 9 and other things. But there's a lot that I do like, and even in terms of modern Star Wars, I know a lot of Star Wars fans aren't a huge fan of it. I really liked Star Wars Visions, like
Oh
the
yeah, I like that. I like that.
anime,
Yeah.
like it's anime anthology. I really dig that show. And then whenever they put out last year Star Wars Visions #1, it was like a one shot that they did. Love that comic. I was upset with it because I heard it was a one shot, and when I got done with it, I was like,
Give me
this,
more.
this is not how you do a one shot. I want more. There's more story here. Like,
Yeah.
don't do this to me. It's like eating a small piece of a yummy steak,
Yeah.
and then they're like, "Oh, there's no more steak." It's like
Wow.
I'm still hungry though. I'm hungry for this hungry steak,
What
for
about,
this yummy steak.
what about Dune? Now, Norton Red, Dune should be compared with the Isaac.
Dune is on another level, so I agree
Dune
with
should
you,
be compared with
Norman.
Isaac Asimov's
Yeah,
uh,
Dune's at another level.
iRobot series. So, as
I am looking forward to Dune 2. I was very saddened. Well, saddened initially, but okay with it afterwards. Whenever it was announced that it's pushed back to March or May, because I was looking forward to like that was my big fall movie was Dune Part 2. I was like, yes, can't wait. And then once it got pushed back, I was like, ah. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I was like, well, they'll be able to fine tune some stuff. So
Yeah. I watched the the Dune movie that came out. What was it? 2 years ago? Came out 2 years
yeah.
ago, right? 2 or 3 years ago. And first of all, I'm somebody who read the books. So I have when you read the books, you have your own vision about like who the
Yeah.
characters are and where they are in this landscape. Um, so it was very different from the, my experience with the books, and that's fine. But I do like how he's like you can see like in terms of what's the essential uh, where the tension is and where the characters kind of make missteps and that lead to this. I really hope they he does a great job in visualizing Paul's journey to drinking the water of life, right? That because he's absorbing the knowledge of time, space, the universe, right? Like that's something that wasn't really like in the David Lynch version. It's he just goes like he's just like going through all this pain, but there's so much more there in the actual the text, right, of
Yeah,
what he goes through and what he's experiencing. And so I really hope in the visual medium that they can capture that, what that looks like. Because
yeah.
for me, when I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is something you just can't like. He's describing it, but you just can't really
It'd be
fathom
tough
that
to actually
experience.
like
Exactly, could a human
not entirely visualize,
Yeah.
but someone to act it out in a way, kind of.
right, right. It's a lot for one individual being to suddenly be possessed with this power, right? To
Yeah,
see the future and the past and all that. So
I mean, they have a hint of that. Those pilots that pilot those ships through time and space. I mean, they have a hint of those guys. I mean, there are side characters that have a certain aspect of that guy's eventual power, but right because people who's navigating the spaceship through time and space, they have to have that certain
yeah, the visions, yeah.
yeah, they have to have that kind of aspect as well. But yeah, Dune's a very deep book. Also, it's very religious book, I think, and yeah, and it can. I don't think it cannot be done in two movies. That yeah, probably need to be done in series.
I'm glad they split it up. To be
Yeah,
honest, yeah, I'm glad they split it up because it was it's a great. It's actually a good ending point because the fact that the tribe accepts Paul and his mother through that battle, that's a huge that sets the character on that second part of his arc to become the Messiah. So I'm glad they split it up, and I'm really excited because I like the the design and the vision that the director's brought. Villanueva, right? He has a great vision for this, and like the epic scale of what's going on Arrakis. So I'm really excited about it, and I love the casting. Chalamet, he's a great. I mean, Paul Atreides was essentially a boy when he gets, and Chalamet has that youthful kind
yeah.
of
yeah.
look. So it was great casting there. Yeah, overall, I think it's not it didn't meet my full expectation, but I was entertained, and I thought, man, I'm looking forward to the second one. So we'll see what happens there.
That's the thing to touch on what Naaman had said. Uh, I haven't read the Dune books, but simply as just like a very amateur and novice storyteller, when I finished the first Dune movie, I was like, this is really awesome. And then I looked because after it was done, I was like talking with my friend. I was like, oh, like this is like a perfect start to a trilogy. Like I could see this, like haven't had read the Dune books. I was like, this is number one. There'll be a two and a three. And then when I looked up after leaving the theater, it was like part two. I was like, holy crap, like all the stuff that seems like the story is going. I don't know how they can do that in one more movie. So I haven't had read the Dune books just from like how it ended and what they set up. I was like, how are they going to do everything in one movie? So
Go and read the books before that second movie comes out.
okay,
Read, and there's four books in the Dune story arc, four novels. Okay, and so what is it? Emperor God of Dune, Children of Dune, and what's the last? There's Dune, and then there's what's the fourth one, Young? Do you remember what the fourth one is?
I read a whole bunch of them. Then I read
The
Anderson
Brian,
Cooper,
the Brian Herbert, the ones written by his son.
yeah, run by
I read the ones written by his son, but it's just a different. It
yeah.
doesn't
That
feel like
that's more
Frank.
like AI books, AI take, robot taking over that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
House of Atreides and House of whatever. I mean, so yeah, it's been a long time since I read those. Dune, Dune
I'm
Messiah.
just saying. Yeah, Dune Messiah, Dune Messiah.
Yeah,
That's the one, and they're all great. Dune is really sort of the one people focus on because it's sort of the set. It's where Paul comes of age and becomes, but the subsequent novels they bridge this history of that story and create a larger context for that world and what becomes of the situation that arises at the end of Dune. So I would just really go and read all those books and just have that ammunition when you go in to watch the movie, because you'll enjoy it a lot more.
Do you lean toward any particular artist, or are you more of you follow a writer more?
No, I'm equally following both sides. When it comes to artists, so I'll mention this. When it comes to writers, Tom King is the one guy where, like, not saying he's my favorite writer, but probably top 5 for me. He's the one guy where, like, whatever book comes out, if it has his name, I'm probably going to read it just because he has that good track record. At least if it's like a 12-issue series or less. I've seen all the other 12-issue series or less he's done. I like what he does, so I'll check out that next one. When it comes to artists, the artists that I'll check out whatever they do, he's my favorite artist. I have a ton more I'll mention in a second. But my favorite artist, Jason Fabok or Fabik. I absolutely love his art. The epicness that he has with his art. Like, yes, he did like 3 Jokers, and like that's a smaller story. You can even make a smaller story look grand and epic, but stuff like Dark Side War, it's not an amazing event, but that art, like Jason Fabik, he needs to be used more on event comics, because I think he could just like I'm not calling for like, hey, let's have 1 million event comics every year, but when we do have an event comic, whatever publisher, DC or Marvel, reach out to Jason Fabik, because the dude can just make stuff so epic. Like I love his artwork for that. So yeah, he's one guy. Like if he does a book, which he doesn't do a lot, because it takes so long for him to do his art, but I just want to see more of his stuff.
Yeah.
I also really like Dustin Nguyen's art. Both like his traditional like pencil, ink, and color art, but also the watercolor stuff. Like, oh my gosh, it's so like
He
Descenders.
was going to be on our show. What happened to him? Otaku Young.
We're gonna get him on.
Dustin Nguyen was going to be on the show.
He was busy with the con schedule.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Like I've loved his art. Like I own like multiple original pages from him, as well as like just original art he does at conventions and stuff. Because like I don't collect floppies anymore, but I collect original art. Probably not the best switch off. Like I got out of floppies from reading Future State with DC because I was just buying all the books, and then 2 months passed. It's like, oh, I spent $500 on comics in 2 months. So I got out of that and went into arguably a more expensive collecting comic.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dustin Nguyen stuff like Descender, I because he's fairly young, I know he'll make great stuff and probably even better stuff. But Descender to me is like his magnum opus. Almost like Descender is such a beautiful book, and Jeff Lemire does great storytelling in it.
Mm-hmm.
The art just heightens it
right
so
yeah
much. I love Descender. And pretty much anything that Dustin Nguyen does, like it's amazing. The little cutesy Gotham stuff, as well as like stuff like Little Monsters and stuff.
Yeah.
Love when he's doing art. Going back to like the older artists, I really like Bill Sienkiewicz. Really love Bill Sienkiewicz's stuff, as well as seeing that like progression of him as an artist. Specifically, what I mean is like he got in with the Moon Knight series back in the 80s. He got in with that, and starting out, they wanted him to do house style. They wanted him to do the classic Marvel look. Robin and Batman, yes, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. The story's good. The art heightens that book, though.
Yeah.
So yeah. But Bill Sienkiewicz, Moon Knight, starts out that classic Marvel look. As it progresses, changes some, and then once he's out of Moon Knight, just like his covers for New Mutants are some of my favorite comic covers. Just how wild it is with his paintings and stuff. His Elektra miniseries.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
Classic.
Like, I love that. Like pretty much anytime I see like a Bill Sienkiewicz art, it's just like, oh, it looks amazing.
What story could you tell that fits his art style?
Do what?
What story could you tell that fits? You have a story in mind that could fit his lifestyle.
Oh man. I could probably. I've got some horror stuff. I feel like I think he's done horror stuff before, but not a lot of horror. And I think his art style could work very well for like kind of surreal, dreamlike horror. And I've got some stories, so I'd probably do if I ever got the chance like a horror comic like that. That would be the dream for Bill Sienkiewicz for me working with him. Um, I know there's a couple more. Oh, Andrea Sorrentino. I really like Andrea Sorrentino's art because talking about like that surreal, dreamlike horror stuff, like that's how I got into Andrea Sorrentino with stuff like Gideon Falls, um, but also his other stuff like his Green Arrow work on New 52. Um, as well as the stuff he's doing now with Jeff Lemire, the Bone Orchard mythos and stuff, which that's strictly horror. So yeah, like he's really good at that. And then, what's his name? The guy who did, okay, I think I remember his name. He did the Batman, or not Batman, Batwoman comic like back in 2009 or something. It's J.H. Williams III. When it comes to being expressive with panel layout, say whatever you want about the series. Like it has highs, it has lows, that Batwoman series. When it comes to page and panel layout, I think that's arguably one of the best page and panel layouts that artists has done consistently in a book. He gets so inventive with his page layouts and his panel layouts. For those that want to check it out, look up J.H. Williams III Batwoman comic page art. It's just so crazy the page layouts he's able to do. The keeping it fresh, like literally just changing stuff where it's a design and the panels are within the design. Like just it's I'm at a loss for words for it because I can't fully describe his art without someone just go to it. Go to his art and look at it. It's beautiful. J.H. Williams.
Miss So asked a question. Do you read manga? Do you watch anime?
Oh yeah, well, anime I watch here and there. I'm more into manga than anime. Mostly for like pacing. Like sometimes there's pacing issues with anime because they either caught up to the manga and now there's filler episodes or whatever it may be. But yeah, I like a good bit of manga. I got into manga about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. My favorite, everyone, Berserk is good. Berserk is probably my number 2 manga. I love Berserk. Berserk is fantastic. I love Vagabond.
Oh,
Vagabond is my favorite manga. It's probably top 3 manga or comics of all time for me. Um, I'm trying to remember the author's name. I think it's uh, Tanahiko Inoue. I might be saying it wrong or forgetting some.
no, you said it right. It's Inoue.
Inoue. Okay.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, like his storytelling that for Vagabond is amazing. For those that don't know what Vagabond is, because they haven't made an anime of it, so that's also like affects popularity of it. They haven't made an anime of it, as well as they might not ever make an anime of it because I don't know how popular it would be because in terms of like teenagers watching it, because that's your target demographic for anime, and then it branches from there.
Yeah.
Vagabond is about Miyamoto Musashi, like actual real life philosopher as well as swordsman. It follows his early years, basically him becoming the man, becoming Miyamoto Musashi, like becoming this philosophical writer, as well as this master swordsman. Basically, going from this kid who lives in the woods, basically, to the man that you read
Yeah.
in history, essentially. And it's just such a great book. Like it has everything. It has like beautiful artwork, like some of the best artwork, like rivals berserk artwork, and some of the best action and fight stuff, because it's very much like a Kurosawa movie, where like it's not cling 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 cling. It's most of the time back then the battle was like waiting for the first strike, and essentially within 2 or 3 strikes the battle's over, basically.
Yeah.
And it does that so well, and you're so invested in that. But that's not just the story. It's not just fights and beautiful artwork. It's also very deep.
Yeah.
Like there's great philosophy in it. There's great whether you're religious or not, there's great religious themes slash, again, if you're not religious, just philosophical things within it. And there's comedic moments here and there, but like realistic comedy, like your daily life.
Yeah.
When
It's
you're just
real. It's like it's like a real life type drama.
It's amazing. Like if people
I could see
haven't-
why you like the Star Wars Vision.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Visions was like, oh, it's like Jedi samurai, and I just read a manga about a samurai. Yeah, it's a fantastic comic, uh, ranging in emotions, amazing storytelling, as well as I mentioned, it's top 3 comic slash manga for me. It's not even done, and I still rank it as that for me. Like it's been on hiatus since 2015, because the mangaka has been working on a few other series. Like he's currently working on Real, which is about wheelchair basketball. I heard it's very, very good. But there's indications that maybe eventually he'll get back into it and finish it. Even if he doesn't finish it, though, like it gets to a point in the manga to where I basically know what it's leading to. Like there's a rival character, like they're great friends, and it's leading towards like a battle that they have. Because Miyamoto Musashi wants to be like the master swordsman.
Yeah.
I forgot what they call it in the book, but it's just so good. As well as like within like volume 5 or whatever, they're even digging into that a little bit of like, what does that actually mean to you? Like to be the master swordsman, to be the greatest swordsman under the red sun. Like what does that mean to you? So like just, oh my gosh, I love it.
Have you seen the Philip Ten's new artwork? The new book he got. What is that? Nornan 2?
What is the book?
Nornan 2 with what's his name? Philip Ten is the artist, and
he was influenced by Inouye's style.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
It's an homage to sort of He said it's an homage to Vagabond and the old, Wolf and Lone Wolf and Cub series. Now, what's interesting what you said about Inoue is very revered in Japan, not for this book, for
Slam Dunk.
Slam Dunk. Yeah, that was a cultural phenomenon in Asia. Not just Japan. It was a cultural phenomenon in Asia.
Slam Dunk.
Slam Dunk. Everybody
that's his biggest book. Yeah.
They just re-released an anime
movie. I heard it was really good.
Yeah, because they did it in today's modern techniques. So you don't have you had these gaps in the motion in the original one. This one is seamless, right? It's like 3D animation. It's seamless motion, a lot of frames per second. But this story of the basketball, it just captured. I mean, it was during the Michael Jordan era. Like everybody was kind of basketball, hip hop. These were like global phenomenons, having huge marketing, reach across all countries, all markets. And in Japan, this is sort of the outlet that a lot of young readers took to this local Japanese basketball team. Yeah. and it still remains such a popular manga and anime to this day. But yeah, absolutely. The you know, Takehiko Inoue is a legend, and that's a great choice as something to recommend for people to get into. So thank you.
Oh yeah, and not just Vagabond. Like I want to finish Slam Dunk. I've read a little bit of Slam Dunk. Stuff like Slam Dunk or Real, because Inoue's like big into basketball. He's a huge basketball fan. Even if you don't care anything about sports, like Slam Dunk, I can't say for Real, but because Inoue's such a great writer, I can say that's probably really good. I just haven't read it yet. But Slam Dunk, like you could care nothing about sports. And it's just very engaging and a really, really great storytelling, really great
Absolutely.
pacing.
One thing
Yeah.
about manga is that they can make a boring chess game sound fun.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there's a book, like I like ping pong, but I understand it being boring to some people. There's a manga called Ping Pong that's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very entertaining.
Yeah. There's one on like I think there's one about um, like cooking, like making different dishes, and it's like a cooking competition. They had one on that. Tennis. They just have them
Oh
on
yeah.
like
The
all
goal game,
the
the
game
goal game,
things.
Padu.
Padu. Go game.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
there's a lot of great manga. Like Vagabond is definitely my favorite manga. I'm trying to think of some more that I really like. I do like some slice of life stuff. I like when it leans to like absurdist comedy, kind of like when it comes to slice of life stuff. Oh, shoot, what's Way of the House Husband? It's about, for those that don't know, it's about a ex Yakuza member. He's like top guy. Well, he isn't like the boss, but he's like a hitman essentially for the Yakuza. Ex Yakuza member. He gets married, and his wife is like a businesswoman. Like she's making the money, and he is a stay at home husband basically. And so he's no longer Yakuza, stay at home husband. And he's washing the dishes, he's getting groceries, he's doing all the stay at home spouse stuff, all with like this like serious kind of mean Yakuza demeanor. And he's a good guy. It's just, that's just who he is,
Right.
to where like he could be in
Comedy with
a
that.
grocery store, like a supermarket, and he just walks up to someone, and he looks very intimidating because people look at him. He's like, that looks like a Yakuza guy. He just walks up and he's like, where's the strawberries? And he has like a creepy look to him, and they're just like, over there. Like it's so funny. It's such a funny comic or manga.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely recommend reading it. It's very funny.
There's a lot of really funny manga. I think that's one thing. Like when you look at what makes it to because for something to get produced into anime, it has to be a commercial hit, right? And there's just there's so much diversity in manga. You probably see only 2% of what's produced in anime, right?
Oh yeah, because it'll come out before it comes to the United States in tankobon volumes. Before it's translated, it'll come out in the Shonen Jump magazine or whatever other publisher. It'll come out in the magazine, like the chapter, the episode essentially. And yeah, like you said, 95% of those get canceled within a year or two. And so they never turn into anime because one, they weren't popular to keep that readership up. And so what's the point of making the anime?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it really is sort of like it's like American Idol, right? You like kind of read through all the talent, and only the cream rises to the top,
Yeah.
and those are the ones that get produced as anime. But that's not to say there's not great manga and
Yeah.
There's always hidden jewels in there somewhere, though.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
What's kind of sad for us in the States that don't read or speak Japanese is a lot of those that get canceled after a year or two, they don't get translated and don't get brought over. So it's like, like we miss out on those hidden gems sometimes.
Absolutely. There's one, I'm wondering if it got turned into and it's really popular. I wonder if did Kingdom ever make it to anime? Because the manga is really popular.
I want to. I think I could be wrong though. I've wanted to read Kingdom, just because I've heard great things. The thing I heard that interests me a ton is that like battles last like 50 to 100 chapters or even more. It's like holy crap! Like that's a battle. It's this long crazy thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want to read Kingdom eventually.
yeah, that's it right there, Kingdom.
Yeah,
The art isn't so great, but they say the story is so compelling
yeah,
that it really makes the like you go with the art basic, and it's such a distinct style. It does make it, but you know, not to. So I'm going to go back to Peach Momoko. What bugged me about what I see on YouTube all the time is people talking about Peach Momoko's work in Marvel. When she did Demon Days, I see so many uh, YouTube creators, YouTube channels that describe Peach Momoko's art style as anime style, and that irks me to no degree because she went out of her way to distinguish herself as not a manga artist, as an American comic book artist,
Oh,
just dealing with the Japanese mythos, dealing with Japanese, the setting in Japan, right? The era of the Edo era of Japan,
yeah,
and that isn't necessarily. She's dealing with Japanese themes and topics, but the art she's trying to make like distinguish herself as not anime. In fact, she doesn't introduce things like chibi style or anything like that. She goes out of her way to make her art more Western and Western style. But people still describe her art as like like they try to put her in a box, right?
yeah, yeah,
They try to like say, "Oh, well, I don't know what I'm seeing. I can't describe what I'm seeing, so I'm just gonna put it in the anime manga category,"
yeah.
which it's not.
she should have just stopped her name at Peach.
Seriously,
Momoko probably
seriously,
not.
like there is an anime manga style, and she went out of her way not to copy
Yeah,
that for her book, and yet people continue to describe her art as like anime manga when it's not.
yeah,
So please, she's Japanese. That doesn't mean she's an anime or manga artist.
yeah,
she's,
exactly.
she's an American comic book artist. Okay, at the end of the day, she's trying to be an American comic book artist. Let's give her that frame of
Yeah,
reference.
Hey,
she's got
Brandon.
that unique spin on it compared to what is here currently with comics and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
To where
absolutely
I'm
innovative.
very much like I don't pick up like floppies from the big two anymore. I mostly do like Kickstarter floppies. I'm picking up that Vision series whenever that drops because she's doing a Star Wars Vision series.
Oh, is she?
Picking that up. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It
really?
comes out either at the end of October or middle of November. It's one of those. I can't remember.
And her Star Wars Darth Vader black white and red, is it? No, it's just Darth Vader black and white, or it's black white and red, I
I
think.
think so because I think there's red. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a silent issue. She does it. She does a silent issue for that, and that people don't realize. Like like that's how good she is. She doesn't need
Here's a.
words per
I mean,
se.
well, I don't think people understand how unpredictable her media is. Her watercolor is so unpredictable,
Oh yeah.
and when people say, "Oh, one of the things people like to say is uh, she's a on and off for me or something like that." What is it? What is it people like to say? She doesn't work for me sometimes or something like that. I'm going. First, you have to consider the media she's working under,
Yeah.
right? It's very unpredictable medium, and then you got this Marvel company probably put some kind of what do you call it, deadline on her
Oh
artwork.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I, you have to first give her art the medium as a consideration.
Yeah.
If you don't appreciate the watercolor, then maybe you say you don't appreciate the watercolor. But
Yeah.
People don't realize what they see on a page for Peach Momoko is analog. It's like there's no digital touch up in what she's producing on the page. Whereas you take most comic book art these days, everything's digitally colored, everything's rendered digitally. So you're getting this really polished, finished product in the modern comic book industry. So I think what people are
hit or miss,
yeah,
hit or miss.
what people are saying when they say she's hit or miss is they're really saying like it looks unpolished, right? It doesn't speak to me like the digital artwork, and that's people who just don't understand like what it goes into producing comic book art,
Yeah.
like the analog process of producing comic book art, right? It's become almost a lost art almost because you have all these tools that can really fix up. It doesn't rely on so much talent anymore. You know, you can be like a semi good artist, but really touch it up to the point where like, wow, it looks like you got all the color and the shading perfect. Like it looks
Mistake is basically a thing that doesn't exist anymore, at least in the
does it.
digital landscape.
Yeah, does it. You can fix up all those mistakes. And that's what makes Peach, I think, special and like unique in her own right. She is doing something no other artist in the Western comic book industry can mimic. Even in the Japanese, like I think she's doing a lot of innovative things that the Japanese manga artists look at and say, "Wow, that's not done in Japan." So she's really in her own space between these two, cultures, and I think we should give her more props for that and
Yeah.
really acknowledge her talent. So when they say hit or miss, you're really just kind of, I don't know. It's like you don't have an eye for like the finer things in life.
Well, that's the thing is like I can understand someone. Oh, I don't prefer this artist or this art style, as long as you understand like what went into making that piece. Because art is subjective. I do understand we have our preferences, but as long as you can understand what went into that piece rather than just being like, nah, it's miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I am not the biggest fan of Frank Frazetta's work, but I understand what an amazing artist Frank Frazetta is, and the amount of talent he had,
Yeah, yeah.
just in terms of anatomy, and then the canvassing work that he did. Like he was a true artist. Like you can say he was a comic book. You could say he's a comic book cover artist, but that's actually doing him a disservice, right? And that's the way I feel like when people say, Peach is a anime art. No, she's a freaking artist. Like
Yeah.
just recognize that. Like she's on the same level as Frazetta, if not, they're both there in terms of like what they do, what they can do on a canvas, what they can do on a page. Not too many people can mimic what they do. So
Oh, yeah.
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 What's
Luckily for me, I wanted to briefly mention this. Luckily for me, my mom was an artist. Like she was an art teacher. Now she is an artist and makes money that way. To where like I grew up on art fundamentals. Now me, I love art. I admire art. I love going to art museums. I love getting original art, buying original art and stuff. Me personally, I suck at art. I'm stick figures basically. Even though I suck at it, I still love and admire it, and ultimately started from that foundation of my mom teaching me the fundamentals essentially.
absolutely.
So how you go about choosing your artists when you write your stories? How do you go about choosing your artist?
So it depends. Like with Dismay Avenue issues 1 and 2, whenever I first did those, when I wrote those stories, I had a specific art style in mind for each one of those stories, to where when I was looking for an artist, I at that time was going on DeviantArt to find artists, like just going through pages of DeviantArt for dozens of hours to find the artist. Because one story I wanted, like we were talking about manga, I really liked Junji Ito, like what he can do with horror. It's very different than our horror, like that Junji Ito Japanese horror is very different than the Western horror, and I really like that. To where I wanted an artist that could not be just beat for beat Junji Ito, but very much Junji Ito inspired. So, because the story itself is very much like a Junji Ito type story. So I found an artist that fit that art style, Gaetano Matriglio. The second one was more like painter, surreal. Not saying Bill Sienkiewicz, but in that realm where it feels kind of dreamlike. And I found Jade Sky through DeviantArt for that. And then another one was more contemporary, kind of contemporary comic art style, a little bit. Oh, why am I blanking on the name of it? Webtoon style, like a little bit that. Um, and then the last one was like a Dr. Seuss type art style, and I wanted specifically that. So it depends. Like with those comics, I had specific art style I had in mind, and then sometimes, like Tales from Town City #1, I didn't have the specific art styles in mind, but I did want someone who could do like comedy well, whether it's action, over the top violence comedy, or if it's like dialogue based comedy to where they can capture facial emotions and reactions very well because it is dialogue driven.
So did you have opportunity to see how people lay out their comic books and stuff before you choose
Oh
the
yeah. Like whenever, because Disney Comics isn't a big name, but it's gotten the teeniest morsel of some form of notoriety to where for Tales from Town City #1 back in February, I put out on social media like a artist searching for artists, essentially, like put out a thing like looking for artists, and then detailed like the thing, and it was a paid gig. And so I had people sending me their portfolios and stuff, and so I'd look through the portfolios and go from there, essentially.
Awesome. Anybody else? Wow, we've been at it about 2 hours.
This was a great conversation, and again, Brandon, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Can you tell people what's coming up next for you?
Yeah, so let's see, 2 weeks from now, October 7th to 8th, it'll be the last convention I do this year. It'll be Pensacon Halloween Fest in Pensacola, Florida. If anyone's around that area, I'll be there October 7th and 8th. And let me see. The next stuff that I have coming out after Tales from Town City, the Tales from Town City, I think there's 8 or 9 more days in the Kickstarter. So if anyone's interested, be sure to do that, because I don't have an online shop.
I have a Kickstarter link in the description.
Oh, perfect.
If you got new, is that the one I showed before? The one
the page, yeah. That's what it will lead you to. Yeah, okay. Like and I just mentioned that just because I don't have an online website or a shop or anything to where the only way you can get the comics is through the Kickstarter. So just wanted to mention that. In terms of future stuff, Gallows Man #3 will come out most likely early 2024. Dismay Avenue #3, more horror oriented, will come out middle of 2024. And then hopefully, like 90% sure right now, Tales from Town City #2 will come out by the end of next year.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, Brandon, good luck with all those projects. And again, go support him in the link below.
One more thing, try to make it to Heroes Con.
I want to. So you, in the past 2 weeks, it's funny you mentioned that, you were the 3rd or 4th person, and not even like online. Like this is like people at conventions or just random people I've talked to, not on the street, but just like.
It's not too big. I don't think it's too big. I mean, it's not.
A lot of people have recommended Heroes Con. I want to. It all depends on like ultimately, when I want to do stuff like in the Northeast, out west, South Florida. I want to do that stuff. It all depends on uh, hotel accommodations. Like I don't care if it's a 1 star, whatever. Like I don't care about sleeping bougie or anything. But it all depends on that as well as the table costs, because I like to factor that in.
Mhm.
But yes, I do really want to do Heroes Con because I keep hearing great things about it.
You should also consider sponsoring, for some of the artists that you work with, bringing them to the convention with you and just manning the table together. Because
I would really like to. Most of the artists I work with live internationally, though.
oh, okay,
Like most are New Zealand, Greece, and UK.
gotcha. Okay,
But yes, I do really want to do that because I also like want to meet all these artists in person. Like
right.
most of the artists I work with, it's email contact or through WhatsApp, or like with some of them a phone call. But with all the artists I work with, I want to meet. Like I haven't had like a really bad experience with any of the artists I've worked with. So
Awesome. Awesome. Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, hey, chat. Thanks for coming by and supporting the. Please, I'll provide the link below for the Brendan's Kickstarter. Uh, I know we're going. Me and Otaku's going to get it, so you guys should get it. The package. We're teasing you guys. Yes, it's been rigged. But yeah, go get it, guys. And I appreciate you guys coming by. And thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Otaku Young.
thank you guys.
Let's end it for the day, and hopefully you'll come back to us in the future
Oh,
with the
100%.
project. So
Yeah. Whether book or no book, I'm always down to come back. This was a lot of fun.
all right, awesome. Let's say bye, guys.
Take care.
Peace out.